Well, happy Monday, everyone. Come on in the room tonight. We are ready for the Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color Podcast Talkback. And so, you all, we're going to talk tonight. I have an empowering panel of women who will be joining us on tonight. And I'm so excited to be celebrating the third year of the Harmonize Your Life podcast with these dynamic women who are going to be dialoguing with us on this evening. So you all come on in. And as you're coming in, I need you to weigh in. Let me know where you're coming in from. Put something in the comments. Let me know that you're with me tonight. This is Dr. Tony Alvarado, your host for the Harmonize Your Life podcast. I'll be bringing my guest in just a moment, but I want to see who is with us tonight. So y'all say something to me as you are coming in to the show tonight, as you're coming into our podcast studio. Just tell me where you are, where you're coming from, where you are viewing this broadcast from, and what you and you can put your tonight. You'll be able to put in questions and dialogue with our guest on this evening, and let us know what type of questions you may have concerning self-care, health, wellness, fitness. We're going to talk all things self-care tonight with this dynamic panel of women. I see you all coming in. Hey, Dr. Talia Clark from Charlotte, North Carolina is in the room with us tonight. Let me see who else is with us tonight. Y'all tag and share and let somebody know that Dr. Tony is live tonight. Dr. Tony is live with the Harmonize Your Life podcast. We are excited to be celebrating 3 years of the Harmonize Your Life podcast. We started this podcast in 2020, right before the pandemic was when we actually launched this podcast. And little did we know that these conversations will become so vital to our everyday existence and to our lives, our health, our wellness, our mental health, fitness, nutrition, all things self-care. So as you all are coming in tonight, I'm going to bring in my guests and introduce them. Hey, Dr. Swazette, I see you from Ellenwood, Georgia. As you all are coming in, I'm going to bring my guests in. I'm going to call their names and bring them in and introduce them to you. So as I bring them in the studio, I will be introducing them. First, I'm up tonight will be Tracy Barbee is in the room with us tonight. Tracy Barbee is a licensed marriage and family therapist, owner of Fountain of Hope Counseling Center in Chesapeake, Virginia. Tracy is the owner of the Fountain of Hope Counseling Center, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist and co-owner of the Marriage Builders LLC. There, Tracy offers services to individuals and couples and families and groups who deal with anxiety, depression, addictions, mood disorders, and a variety of mental health issues. And so welcome tonight, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
All right. And a little secret about Tracy, we're really family, right?
Right. Exactly.
We go way back. Our families are connected through ministry.
Yes.
And her son is our godson, and she is the godson to our middle son, Joshua, godmother to our middle son, Joshua. And I'm just so excited to have Tracy with us on this evening. Next up is Melodie Boone is in the room with us tonight. Reverend Melodie is the owner of the Liberty Coaching and Consulting LLC. She serves and empowers female Christian leaders through creativity, productivity, accountability in ministry, business, and life. Melodie coaches leaders to tear down barriers, confront personal obstacles and limiting beliefs, building personal esteem and self-growth. She is a certified growth coach through Targeted Living Coaching and Consulting. Wonder who's trained her. And a certified life and executive leadership coach through Paradigm 360 Coaching in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was blessed to receive the honor of Coach of the Year in 2015, winning the Coach Beelan Award of Excellence in Coaching. She is also an elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. She's a gifted psalmist, preacher, co-pastors with her husband, the Reverend Tony Boone. She is a mother of Brian and Bryson. Welcome, Reverend Melodie.
Thank you, Pastor Tony. So excited to be here. So excited to be on the platform.
I'm glad to have you with us tonight. Now, my friend, Dr. Valerie Bridgeman is in with us tonight. Reverend Dr. Valerie Bridgeman is the Dean and Vice President for Academic Affairs and Associate Professor of Homiletics and Hebrew Bible at the Methodist Theological School in Ohio, otherwise known as MTSO. She holds a PhD from Baylor University, MDiv from Austin Theological Seminary, a BA from Trinity University. She is a womanist, theologian and scholar, preacher of homiletics, professor. She is a scholar par excellence with several publications under her belt. Homiletics, the Oxford Encyclopedia of Biblical Interpretation, a perspective on David narratives with Rizpah, and perspective on teachings of Jesus, the Syrophoenician woman in Mark 7, global perspectives on the Bible, Jonah and Nahum, and those preaching women. Welcome, Dr. Valerie. Unmute yourself.
I am. I was like, I'm slow on the uptake. I'm really glad to be here. I'm more glad to be here to hear what other people have to say than anything I may add. I don't know how other people feel when they're being introduced, but I'm like, stop it. Like, we be girlfriends. Let's do that. Okay.
Well, I just want the people to know who you are, because some of these people are hearing you for the first time, so they need to know. Then after this, we're gonna have girlfriend talk. Okay.
I got it.
All right. So next up is Leah Jackson. Let me bring her in. Reverend Leah D. Jackson, born and raised in Detroit. Has been called to minister the word of God. She is a preacher, a pastor, educator, writer, and dancer. She was ordained in the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, by Ray of Hope Christian Church here in Decatur under the leadership of the Reverend Dr. Cynthia L. Hale, where she serves as the Minister of Christian Education for almost 8 years now. She is a licensed member of the State Bar of Georgia and specializes in technology and intellectual property law. She received a Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy with a focus in child advocacy from Spelman College in 2002. And she also holds a Master of Divinity from the McAfee School of Theology in 2012. She is a member of the Board of Visitors for McAfee School of Theology and editor for the Just Women magazine, a publication of the Christian Church, a member of the Commission on Mission for Georgia of the denomination, and a chaplain in the Atlanta chapter of the National Alumni Association for Spelman. She is also an author of a devotional, Daily Manna from the Psalms, Nuggets of Hope for the hungry Christian, and is finalizing her second devotional book. Welcome, Leah, Reverend Leah.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be with you and to share with these wonderful women of God in discussion and have some girlfriend talk, like Dr. Bridgeman said. So I look forward to it.
Oh, thank you, Reverend Leah. It's good to have you with us tonight. All right, here comes Jada Wright Nichols. Good evening, Jada.
Good evening.
Let me introduce you formally. Jada, MSOTR/LRYT. Now, I asked me what all those letters mean. I'll let her explain that. But she discovered yoga for herself while trying to find a treatment for debilitating migraines. She was young, strong, active, and was determined to be pain-free and medication-free. After her third class, she was pain-free and hooked. She's been practicing yoga for 15 years and teaching yoga for more than 6 years after training in Costa Rica, Miami, and New York. She is my personal yogi. In addition to being a registered yoga instructor, she is also an occupational therapist, massage therapist, holistic nutritionist, a doula, and a lactation consultant. She loves helping families to live their best lives through this variety of wellness offerings. Welcome, Jada.
Thank you. It's good to see you on a Monday night at 7:00 where we always see each other.
Yes, and the reason she says that because she hosts for Harmonize Your Life Women's Self Care Network every Monday night. We're on Zoom with Jada at 7 p.m. So tonight we're not in yoga, we're here. And but if you want to join our yoga group, just email us after this, and you'll find out how you can become a part of our Monday night yoga group. All right, join the Harmonize Your Life Women's Self Care Network, and you can be a part of that Monday night yoga group with Jada. Welcome, Jada.
Thank you.
All right, let's see who's up next. Reverend Dr. Jessica Ingram. Let me bring her in the room. Good evening, Dr. Ingram.
Good evening, Dr. Tony.
Dr. Ingram is an anointed spiritual director, speaker, and author, delivering over 44 years of notable achievement in helping individuals develop and sustain strong relationships with God. As the founder of the Ingram Difference, Reverend Dr. Jessica masterfully cultivates a trusted, sacred, and safe space for spiritual formation. Her engaging and personalized approach allows individuals to examine their spiritual growth for a life filled with focus, purpose, and fulfillment. She is a devout woman of service. For years, she has been recognized as a visionary, noble woman of excellence, a pillar of hope through global communities. Since 2012, she has over 45 years of ministry experience in the AME Church, recently serving as an Episcopal supervisor for 3 Episcopal districts of the AME Church, the 15th district in South Africa, the 10th district in in the state of Texas, and the 1st district in Bermuda and the East Corridor. Her unwavering commitment to make a difference soars her beyond the walls of the local church. She is the founder of Lift Women's Center in Detroit, which provides essential resources for restoration and empowerment for over 30,000 women recovering from physical, mental, and substance abuse. Welcome, Dr. Ingram.
Thank you, Dr. Tony. What did you do? Save the oldest person for last?
No, I got one more after you.
Oh, okay. It's good to see everybody, and just a blessing to hear all the accomplishments of these bad sisters. Praise God.
Yes, this is going to be a good conversation tonight. Listen, those of you that are coming in, share this broadcast with somebody. Share it. Let somebody know that Dr. Tony is live, and she has some of the baddest women around in town on with her tonight, and we're going to have just really good girlfriend conversation in just a moment. Let me bring my last guest in for tonight. Last but not least is Desiree Young. Desiree Young is a licensed minister, ordained elder who serves at Victory Worship Center in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Professionally, Desiree is an executive administrator with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention Control. She is skilled and has over 30 plus years of combined experience and education in leadership development, leadership administration, and leadership organization. Her expertise allows her to facilitate change through creative dialogue and analyzing information to guide women to connect their gifts, talents, and abilities to become a better version of themselves. She is a certified Christian life coach and chief pioneer of Purpose Pioneer Coaching LLC. She is very passionate about the about women achieving personal development and spiritual identity. Her motto is to be a light in the lives of those she meets while leaving an impact that will foster a life of transformation. She recently published the I Am Commanding Your Day with Affirmations, a daily journal, a 90-day guided journal, which was created to help one to speak positive words and statements over themselves. And she is expected to release another journal, I Am My Priority, taking care of me from the inside out. in the spring. All right. All right.
Great.
Welcome, Desiree.
Great evening. Thank you, Dr. Tony. Thank you for having me. Great evening, everyone. And I am so excited about this conversation tonight.
I am too. I am too. So let's get into it. Let's talk. So I sent you all just some general kind of questions that all of us can talk about. You all know that I have been hosting these conversations on my podcast for about 3 years. I've been involved in just this whole movement of self-care for, maybe on my own personal journey. I've been involved for about 20 years in my personal journey. Well, maybe now 24 years in my personal journey of self-care. Right after I had my daughter, Ariel, I went on this journey of self-care. So she'll be 20. She is 24, I think, or she's 23 or 24. Somebody help me out. So anyway, yeah, she's 20. She'll be 24 this year. You know, when your kids start getting older, you got to remember their ages, right?
And their names.
I was 23. She'll be 24 this year. Right after she was born, I went on this self-care journey. And so I've been on this journey for a while, this idea of living holistically. Now, my story is that we were at that time, we had 3 children under the age of 3. Our church was in a crazy growth stage. We were pastoring 3 locations of our church. During that time, we had 5 worship services on a Sunday. We were doing television ministry. We were in seminary. It was crazy. And when I think about that time in our lives, I don't know what we were on that had us going like that. It was crazy. Dr. Bridgeman, I don't know what we were on. But what I do know is we were not taking care of ourselves. We were preaching, we were teaching, we were pastoring, but we were not taking care of ourselves. And so I started to notice, for me, one day I was lying on my bed and I could literally feel my heart palpitating on my mattress. And I started noticing that my hand, I was having tremors, and I could barely even write my name, sign a check or anything. My hand was just shaking all the time. And so I was like, something's not right here. I was tired. My mood was just inky. I just could not focus. So I ended going to the doctor to see what was wrong with me, and discovered I had developed a hypothyroid condition called Graves' disease. And so it wasn't a hereditary thing for me. What it was stress induced. And it was that wake up call that took me on this journey. That year I turned 37 that year. And Bishop asked me, my husband asked me, what did I want for my birthday that year? Mind you, when we got married, I was wearing a size 6. And by that time I was wearing a 16. And so I was overweight. I was out of shape. I could barely walk upstairs without about to pass out. And so he asked me that year, what do you want to do? What do you want for your birthday? And I said, a treadmill. And I'm like, who asked for a treadmill for their birthday? I did, because I was like, I need to do something. I joined the local YMCA in our neighborhood in Covington, Georgia, a few exits up from where we live now. And that's when I started my journey. And I haven't looked back. And of course, I started where I was. I started small, which I tell everybody, start where you are. I started small. And over the years, I've had several trainers, nutritionists, and I've developed now what I call my self-care board of directors, me being the chair of that board, and now engaging in self-care, health and wellness, and holistic living. And so once it became a part of my lifestyle, I felt like, when Jesus told Peter, when you have been converted, strengthen your brother. And I felt like part of my call after that was to go back and get my sisters and help us to be healthy, spirit, soul, and body. And so that's where I started my journey. So fast forward, I've started hosting retreats, self-care retreats. I did my first self-care retreat in 2017. Melodie was at my first retreat. In 2018, I wrote the book, Harmonize Your Life, A Journey Towards Self-Care. And in 2020, we launched the podcast and the Self-Care Network. And it has grown into a movement that I believe is relevant, and it is for today. And I'm just excited to have you all on this journey with me. And so I want to just start this conversation tonight, talking about, why do you all feel like these conversations on self-care are so important for women of color particularly? Why do you all think? And anyone, just whoever wants to jump in on that, is, we're just talking. We're having a cup of tea. I'm drinking tea. All right, go ahead.
So just to take a point further about where your journey started, there are so many women who take being pregnant, birthing a child, carrying a child, growing a child as the opportunity to find renewal within themselves. So regardless of what had been happening in their lives, they find this as a new beginning. They want to be their best selves for their children, but also so that they can feel, good. And so with the maternal health rates being what they are for Black women in particular in this family, and the infant mortality rates being what they are for Black children in this family, which those rates are abysmal. We have maternal and infant mortality at the same rates as war-torn and third world countries for Black women of all classes. So it's not just poor Black women, impoverished Black women. It is not just those who don't have educational resources. It is Serena Williams. It is Allison Felix. It is those same women who, because they've not been empowered as you are to be the chairperson of the board of their own self-care board of directors, we typically find ourselves with care providers who don't trust us and who we often don't trust. And so that just leads to a variety of decisions that are not in our best interest or our children's. And so starting exactly where you started is the perfect time, way, and reason to make that happen.
Wow. So Jada, when you said because of the healthcare systems, we have health providers that don't trust us and that we don't trust. So do you think that's one of the reasons why we as a community have to take on these issues for ourselves and become that empowerment zone for Black women?
Absolutely. It's well known that when we have care providers who look like us and who have shared the care, the outcomes, the actual outcomes are dramatically improved. Lives are saved when we have care providers who trust us, who think like us, who have been where we've been, who can relate to us on the same levels. So yes, it is up to us to save the lives. And, for those who are beyond childbearing years, this conversation is still important because you've got daughters and daughters-in-law and granddaughters who will need this information that, we didn't always have access to. We did have it. There are midwives and doulas in the Bible, of course, and before, but those have turned into luxuries. They've turned into luxury items, luxury attributes around a birth when they are really quite essential. We had a village. We had sisters and mothers and aunties supporting each other not only throughout the pregnancy, but at the birth and beyond. For a year beyond, we had women taking care of other women with new children, new babies. And so, you know, it's tough to get back to that because we barely have paid leave now. But but yes, it's definitely up to us to make all of those differences.
Okay. Right.
Dr.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Tony, when I'm listening to this, and it starts with, yes, we had all of those people in our lives to support us and things like that. However, when I was listening to your story, it's not until something happens really that we find that we start to really take care of ourselves and look at this self-care piece, right? And so when the abnormal has become normal in our lives, when we're so used to going, we're so used to pushing, and we're told to push through. And as African-American women, we're told, you got to push through, you know, be independent.
The strong Black woman motif.
Yes,
exactly. And so we're pushing and pushing, but at the same time, our internal selves are breaking down.
Yeah.
And so our physical selves are looking like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. But we look at it and I say, we were programmed to be like this, right? And so what does that look like? The way I grew up. Yes, my mother had me in activities. So I was a part of the cheerleading when I was growing up. I was a part of sports, but I was never a part of it to the point where I was told that this is self-care. You know, I was in it because give the kids something to do and all of that, right? So not that I'm really taking care of myself, and even eating, programmed to eat whatever you had and whatever they could make and stuff like that. So this whole nutritional piece, you know, all we know is how we grew up. And so when we try to do this self-care, we drop off. Sometimes we're not consistent because that's not what we were programmed to be and what we learned, right? And so because now when something happens to our bodies or internal, we're in this, okay, I don't want to die. How do I make myself live a little longer? What can I do? All of this other stuff. And so we're pushed into it from a standpoint of sickness, not so much of a standpoint of, I really want to get my health together.
Exactly.
Something happens, weight gain or anxiety or depression, and somebody's now saying you have to do this. So the strong Black woman, independent motif, we were programmed to be that way and not really do self-care.
So I wanted to add to that earlier, because I didn't want to get too far from your initial conversation about a question about why it was important. I appreciate everything that's been already said, but I was thinking two pieces. One is we have some really, really bad theology about incarnation. So we will literally say we are spirits having a physical experience as if our physical bodies are not important to God. And yet the incarnation is at the core of our Christian theology, but we don't act like that. So that thing messes us up. And people, we have cute little sayings that add to that. Like people will say the definition of joy is Jesus, others, and you. Well, that's one, that's not biblical. and two, we rarely get to the you part of that when we do it like that.
Right.
Because we have been trained to take care of everyone else. But I I was on the plane coming home, and they always say, put the mask on yourself first, right? And which is kind of what the scripture says when it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? That there's a near impossibility to being deeply connected to other people if you're not connected to yourself. I just
say that again. You cannot be deeply connected to other people if you're not deeply connected to yourself.
Right. I mean, we become doers, human doers instead of human beings. And that impacts whether or not we take care of ourselves. You know, I say this as someone who for years took care of myself, then got depressed, and because depression is not godly, I just hear me out. I couldn't manage sort of the emotional struggle while pastoring, while teaching, while everything else, and my physical self at the same time. So I let my physical self go, not recognizing how interconnected that was.
Wow.
That's the work I think we have to figure out how to help people get to.
And Pastor Tony, I also think it's important that we see that it's okay to have these conversations. Normally, when we don't feel like we're in a safe place, we don't want to talk about those personal issues of health, mindset, where we struggle internally, where we struggle with our food issues, why we overeat, depression, oppression. And so we carry all that burden inside of us and we don't find a safe place to share. And I think that's the reason why conversations like these are so critical. When you have a network of people where you can feel safe, where you can share your struggle, where you can find safety
And not be judged.
and not be judged by it, but know that it's okay. And you have a circle of support that will hear you, pray for you, and encourage you and let you know it's okay to ask the hard questions. It's okay to talk about the struggle, and you won't be judged, but you have a safe place where you can land when you're finding these personal issues of self-care. Because for a long time, you know, we think of self-care of getting a massage when we have the money or the resources or the gift card to go get a massage.
The gift card.
There is more, right? When self-care is more than that, you know,
Yes.
it's about our mindset. It's about how we embrace our bodies, how we relate to food and all of these things. But if we don't have a safe place to have conversation like tonight, we carry this stuff along and then it eats away with us. And then we look and we're 60 pounds overweight. We're dealing with depression.
How did that
We don't
happen?
have a way out. And
Yeah,
so I think these conversations like tonight and your personal board of directors, you know, when we do develop those board of directors, are we comfortable enough to talk to them about what we're going through? And I think that's so critical as we grow in this thing called self-care.
Yeah.
Dr. Tony,
Yes, Dr. Ingram.
you know, since I was sitting there thinking, I know that I am, and I don't have an issue with my age, but I know I'm the oldest one in this conversation. And thinking about growing up and seeing my mother, her sisters, grandmother, I know that we all know that the issue of self-care, as we are talking about it now, is not something that I believe ever entered their minds. Years ago, I preached a sermon from, and I don't know why the author's eluding my mind right now, but the book In Search of My Own Garden.
Alice Walker, is that
Right.
And
And the Song of Solomon says, "My mother's children were angry with me. Other vineyards have I kept, but my own I did not." And I'm just saying that I am blessed to live to see this time in the lives of Black women who are coming to the place of knowing that self-care is important. For my mother and her 5 sisters, self-care for them, Tony, was being in Chicago and them all just sitting around the table talking and speaking in Pig Latin.
okay.
Y'all don't know about Pig Latin, do you? That's what they didn't want us to know what they were talking about in some kind of way. Twist those, but that was it, and cooking food that they shouldn't be eating, you know, and laughing. That was as much as it was that I could see of self-care. So my whole point right now is that I am blessed to live to see the changes that are taking place in us as Black women. And at 75, I'm still struggling with how do I really care for myself, because it's not a model that I grew up with.
Yeah. And to say this about our mothers is, you know, they did the best, they did what they knew to do.
That's right.
I mean, for them, self-care, they were surviving a whole lot. And so are we in our context. They didn't have the what can I say? The opportunities that we have today. They didn't have that. So for them, self-care was getting together around the table.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But that was their expression of self-care. So we certainly are not demonizing our mothers, and we are certainly not saying that you know, they did what they knew.
But we have evolved into knowing more. You know, exposure.
Yeah, and when you know better, you should
do better.
You do better, right? And I believe that that you know, we have an opportunity today. I think that's one of the reasons these conversations are so important, is because we have an opportunity to leave something for the next generation of women coming behind us, that hopefully they won't repeat some of the mistakes we've made.
Right.
You know, in course correcting ourselves, you know.
Dr. Tony,
yes.
One of the things that I think is so key of what Dr. Ingram just said is the tradition that our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers left us about getting together and dialoguing about what we deem important. Right? And so we are gathering today in that tradition to pass on.
That's good.
To our generation, but to those to come, what we deem important. And so because we say self-care is important, we're allowing them to come to the table with us. To share the same wisdom that they shared with us while they pressed and braided our hair, right?
That's it.
I love that.
We're passing it.
You're holding those ears.
Girl, my ears got burnt so much. And then you put your hand up there, and then they
and then they covered it up on Easter Sunday by putting the hat on top of their work so nobody would see the ears. So you just had hair hanging down here.
That's a good
my auntie owned a hair salon in West Helena, Arkansas. Now that was self-care, because I'm telling you, when those sisters came in there, ooh, they had a time. The conversations and the smell of the hair burning and all of that. Yeah.
I think that my grandmother and her friends sitting around a quilt was self-care. Quilting and talking and whatever. I mean, one of the things I do want to say about this is I think when people hear the phrase self-care, they do think cost. They think, well, I don't have, extra whatever. And I've heard you say, Dr. Tony, you're going to pay it one way or the other. But the truth of the matter is, a walk in a park,
come on, doctor,
breathing deeply is self-care. And that don't cost you nothing but time. And part of the challenge is also to manage our time in a way that we can take care of ourselves. I mean, even if you don't have a dime to spend besides, I think about the time my mother would say to us, she would get in the car and we would say, Mama, where you going? She'd say, crazy. And we would say, can we go with you? But she would get in her car and drive to the park and go sit in the park for an hour just to get out of
and that's
around the 5 children that were literally driving her crazy, right? And then come back and do what needs to be done. So I think sometimes when people hear self-care, they hear, oh, you went to a spa and that cost $1,000. Oh, you went to Aruba with Dr. Tony, and I'm glad I did. And that cost $5,000. People don't know how you're saving money to do that. But some of this is, some of self-care is assessing how you're spending your money, how you're spending your time, how you're spending your energy, and is that the best use of it so that you can. One of the things I say to my students all the time when they get ready to do a master's is, what are you going to say no to since you said yes to this?
Now, Dr. Bridgeman, that is so true, because you can't, if you cannot keep piling on your plate and not taking something off. It's just like when we get dressed. You don't just continue to put clothes on top of clothes. You have to take something off in order to put something else on. And I think that you're right. We don't manage our time. We don't know how to say no and not feel guilty about it. Say yes when we shouldn't be saying yes. You know what I'm saying? And we overload
I'm
ourselves.
like, say no and feel guilt. That guilt will pass.
Yeah.
When you get used to saying no to things you shouldn't be doing.
But a lot of people, a lot of women struggle with that. A lot of women struggle with that. I came into this year, and I'm gonna put a few comments up in a minute. I see. Let me say this real quick. I'm gonna put Aaron Boss comment up. Aaron says self-care was serving for them. They had society meetings, tea cake meetings, and porch side gatherings. Talking about our mothers. That's wonderful. That was wonderful. Okay. Coming into this year, I knew that there were some things I needed to stop doing and some things I needed to start. Some things in order for me to focus on some different areas. And they're not always bad things, or things, they might have been good for a season, but then when is it time to let something go, or let someone else do it, or just say, no, I can't do this anymore. And so I did that. I came into the year and I knew that I had 3 things I had to focus on this year. And so there were some organizations and even some committees that I was serving on that I had to say, I can't do that this year. I can't do that right now. There were some organizations I had to say, I can no longer serve in this capacity, in a leadership capacity in this organization, because I have to focus on 3 things. And you'll be surprised at the responses you get from people when you have to make those kind of decisions. And you'll be surprised at the internal conversation that you have to have with yourself to stay true to that. You know, to honor that. And so
I think that's because we all are worried about FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. Like if I say no to this, if I don't go to that, you know, I hate that I can't go to Women in Ministry every year. I hate it, but it's literally almost always the first week of the semester. I can't be away. I'm the dean, you know, and so I'm like, okay, that's something I can't do, and I don't feel good about that, but it's an honest assessment of my time.
And that's it, an honest assessment of your time, and being okay. Being okay with that.
Dr. Tony, may I? I think that part of our inability to say no to a multiple number of things is the need to feel significant. And so the more I do, the more significant I am. And of course, the reverse of that. One of the things that has happened to me in retirement, because in the AME church, you have to retire by the time you're 75, it decreased a whole lot of stuff for me to say yes to.
Wow.
And it has made it much easier. But when I was in it, I defined who I was by all, you know, all of the things that I was doing. But anyway, so significance plays a lot with our not saying no to all of these different things. It sounds good, Dr. Valerie, to have a resume, you know, and when we're saying like, yes, I'm sounding pretty good there with all of those things that I've accomplished. But we have to look at it. I always remember the theology of Howard Thurman that I was in seminary years ago, that he talked about a singleness of purpose. Just a not impressed with doing so much. Who am I? What do I want? and
Yeah.
how do I really want to get it? It was 3 fundamental questions.
Who am I? What do I want? And how do I really want
What do I want really?
What do I want really?
Really. And that's the key. We don't really know what we want. And so we all over the place trying to get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
We really don't know what we want. And so
Dr.
we're
Jessica,
all over
talk
the
about
place.
how you find out what you really want.
Mhm.
Because I think that's I mean, if we've been told, I feel like I'm talking too much, but if we've been told that we are significant in our yeses by, by the invitations we receive, I know people who literally go from event to event to event and exhaustion level. And I did that at one time. So I'm not actually saying this in judgment. I'm saying, how do you get to knowing what you really need to be doing? I think that's the question when people and we're still talking about self-care because if you're running hither and there and it's not at the core of your purpose, that's exhausting. So how do you know?
You said
I
it
was going
earlier.
to ask Tracy. I want Tracy to talk about that because I think some of that's worked out in therapy. I know for me, it's been worked out in therapy and spiritual direction. And so I think between Tracy and Dr. Ingram, I think I'd like for you to answer that question. We got some questions coming from the ladies that from our audience, from our community that I want us to get to in a minute. But to get to what you just said, Dr. Ingram, Dr. Bridgeman, Tracy and Dr. Ingram, kind of talk about that, how we work that out in therapy and spiritual direction. How do we get to get to know what we really want and get to that place of singleness of purpose?
For in a mental health setting, what I try to do is self-care. It's not so much doing, but it's awareness, right? Becoming aware. And so if I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all of you wonderful women speak, and I become resistant in something that someone said, I am now becoming, that's self-care for me, because I am now in the space of, you just resisted something that someone said. What's going on within you? So self-care is not just I'm doing or I'm sitting and looking at the trees or any of that. Self-care is actually getting to know who you are. And when you're doing things, and if someone said something and I was like, but I said to myself, I noticed in that moment I was resistant. My noticing of that is me becoming aware and self-care, because then that means that there was something that I went through or I experienced that I'm now resistant or I have my own opinions about, and I'm not open to listening to anybody else's. See, that's just self-care in and of itself.
Just being aware of your triggers.
Just being aware of those things like that. And most people don't know, because I look at it and say, as a child, I didn't have, my identity was given to me. My name, where I grew up, my education, my religion, what type of food. You can hang out with these friends. You can't hang out with these friends. You can hang out with this relative. So basically, here you go, Tracy. Here's your identity. And then as we get older, we're trying to figure out, who am I? What do I like? Do I even like this? That's because we were given our identity. And then at that place, when we got out of line, there was consequences. You either got to beat in our language or, something else. And so get back in line. And now we're sitting here like, what do I like? Do I like this? So self-care is becoming aware of who you are, not just going to get the massage like you guys said, or just sitting somewhere and spending money. But when you really know and you pull back those layers, then you can say, oh, who am I? But if we don't know who we are, who are we actually taking care of?
One of the things I found out from one of my professors, one of my therapists in therapy, I found out that I was saying yes to things because I had two fears: a fear of rejection and a fear of failure.
But Dr. Tony, and what that is truth be told, growing up, babies, as children, we have only 2 fears that we're born with. 2. Everything else is handed to us. The 2 fears is falling. Look at a baby. Falling and loud noises. Those are the only 2 fears that we are naturally given. Everything else is from society and stems from everybody else.
Wow. And
what's the second one? Pastor Tony, what's the second one?
The fear
What
of
was the
loud,
second one?
and the fear of loud noises.
See, think about a baby and they hear noise and they
Gotcha.
noise, and when they start trying to walk, their fear of falling. Those are the only 2 that we're given. They are natural. Others are given to us.
And I agree with you. And so what for me, when I realized through therapy that I had a fear of failure and a fear of rejection, it stemmed from literally when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I had a girl a white girl saw me, pointed at her mother and started crying and said, "I'm scared of her. She's Black." And so I grew up the rest of my life not liking the fact that I was dark skinned. And I didn't realize how that had gotten into my psyche.
Yes.
And so that was an acceptance issue. Oh, don't I don't want to be around her. She's Black. Right. And so then that set in me. And so then everything was, let me say yes to stuff so I can be accepted. So I can be accepted.
Yeah.
Let me push so I don't fail.
I was.
Who was saying something there? Jada?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say. Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything. Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything until now, but I will. So much of what we are talking about is rooted in slavery. And so when we get to that understanding, we start to feel free. So even the significance, even feeling like I'm in this place, I'm here with my children next Sunday, I don't want to be ripped from my children from this place where I'm somewhat comfortable or at least familiar. So I have to be significant. I have to do this amount of work, this obnoxious amount of work. I have to do all of these things so that I don't get in trouble. I don't get beaten. I don't get, worse. So the slave
master will be satisfied with me.
The slave master, so much of who we are and what we feel. We're not that many generations removed from slavery. We're not that many. So when we talk about our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, we're not that many generations removed. So, all of these fears, this, kind of, you didn't say self-hatred, but in a way it's the I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way that other people perceive why I look this way or what my look means to them. So much of it is rooted in slavery, and and the people out there will have you think like you should just get over it. But it is embedded within us, and we have to think about the hows, the whys, the roots.
And I will say, and this is just the first question. We're still on the first question. Black women. But let me just say this: we carry the trauma. That trauma is still alive today in us, and we carry it in the way we live our lives and even this whole self-care thing. I agree with you. We do. We're not that many generations away from slavery, and we are carrying the trauma of that, which is why it is so important that we have these conversations and that we are liberated and that we help liberate one another. This is so good. Let me get to some of the questions, y'all. These women are in here and they are asking us some questions. So let me just get to a couple of the comments here. Stacy Adams says, being an advocate for ourselves and setting boundaries, we cannot continue to pour into an empty vessel and expect to give ourselves to others. I am the CEO and board and the director of my self-care. She got that. Good. She got that. Let me see here. I think I got a couple of of questions that came up that I want to make sure that we get to. Let me see. It was one question in particular about boundaries that, oh, here it is. Madeline Fields asked the question, would like to hear more about boundaries, especially when you aren't used to it. If time allows, just out home from work. Okay, so say something about that, boundaries. And we kind of got into that at the retreat, at the self-care retreat in
yeah, I was surprised by how many people were bothered by the word boundaries. I was like,
talk about boundaries.
But literally, that's what I was trying to say when I said, that whole thing about feel guilty about it, lay down, it'll pass, so that you can get used to setting these kinds of boundaries for yourself and others. It will feel bad at first.
Yes.
It will feel bad because it's against what you know. Let me say this, there's somebody who used to coach basketball. There are people who can make basketball shots the wrong way. And when you try to correct their shot, they will start missing after they had been making their shots the wrong way. But once they learn the correct way, you won't be able to stop them. And so there will be some missing, I think, as you correct the way you get in this. But once you figure it out, sometimes it's saying no and then don't add an explanation.
Exactly.
Because that's a habit we have. No, I'm sorry, and apologizing for things we really don't mean to apologize for. Just say no and bite your tongue if you got to not say anything else behind that.
Dr. Bridgeman, let me ask, did you say you coach basketball?
At 4'11", I can't.
When she said that, I started looking. I was like, what?
Yes, I did indeed.
Okay.
I did indeed.
She was a woman of many talents. I was thinking the same thing, Dr. Ingram.
I just wanted clarity.
Add that to her resume.
And I was good at it.
I believe that. But something you said, though, you said that once they get it the right way, there's no stopping.
And
so that's why these conversations are important, because we got to get this right.
Right, exactly. And to add to what Dr. Valerie said, we have to unlearn some things and relearn some things. And that's all about changing our mindset and not feeling guilty about doing so. Once you say no a couple of times and mean it, you're good. It's just no. And yes, again, as she said, we're saying sorry, we're apologizing when we really don't mean that we're sorry. But we have to learn how to apologize or say we're sorry. That's not going to fit into my schedule today. I'm sorry that you're going through this. Let me see. I'll pray for you, or let me see if I can direct you to someone else, but I can't help you today. And that for me takes away that whole notion of entitlement, because so many people pull on us because they're entitled. They have so much access to us. So they're entitled and think that every time that there is a request of us that we should say yes. And when we say no, oftentimes we feel bad about saying no. But as it has been said, no is a complete sentence with an exclamation point at the end of it.
Years ago, when I was working on my master's in counseling, this was back in the 80s and 90s, the one book I remembered was entitled "When I Say No, I Don't Feel Guilty." And the instructor, who was a white male, would have us to say it over and over again. When I say no, I don't feel guilty. But that is a hard lesson to learn.
It is.
And although I was in my 20s and I passed the course and I got an A, I didn't really learn how to say no at that time. But years will teach you some lessons if you're willing to learn.
Surely. And listen, when our mama said no, that's what they meant. No.
That's right. Don't ask me again.
Right. Because I said
and there's a way to do that and still be graceful. And what I like to say is there's a way to model that in a way that gives other people permission to take care of themselves. One of my one of the things or quotes that I share about self-care is that when you take care of you, you give other people permission to take care of themselves.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, because I am cognizant of my own self-care, I do my best. Now, sometimes I miss it, but I do my best to give the other people in my world, in my orbit, that space as well.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I have one of my daughters in ministry. Just recently, she was trying to do something that we were talking, and she was talking about how she was managing her finances, and so she wanted to go with me to Ariel's. She wanted to support Ariel's recital that's coming up, and so she was trying to figure it out and this and the other. And I finally just called her and I said, "Hey, why are you trying to do this?" And she said, "Well, I just want to support." And I said, "You do know it's going to be streamed. You can support her that way."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "You just told me that you was trying to work on, saving some money, this, that, and the other." And I said, "You don't have to put yourself in debt to prove to me or Ariel or anybody else in our family that you support her."
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Yeah." And see, sometimes people, because they love us and they want to support and they want to help and they want to be there for us, they will put themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm a real strong advocate for people in leadership, those of us in leadership, how we steward that influence over people's lives, because sometimes just because you ask, they'll do it. Right? Which means you shouldn't always ask.
Mm-hmm.
You should be careful about how you ask.
Yeah.
So that, because that thing about modeling, Dr. Jamie put in the chat, and we have to be prepared for the grief that comes when you start making changes. I just wanted to lift that up, because those of us who have been pastors and or counselors know that there are times when people, they take their balls and go home, they throw fits because you change. Your change is a change in their life, right? Because they counted on using you or sometimes abusing you. And when you decide no to that, then the loss of relationships and the ways in which people may go away is real. That's a real thing. And I didn't want to gloss over that, that she put that in. So I think part of when we say self-care, it's also managing our emotions around these new ways of being in the world.
And that's true. That's true.
And
And
managing our expectations.
Yeah. I would add this too. Last thing I'd say about this is, one of the things I say to people all the time is we have a lot of anticipatory grief over what we're going to lose and no anticipatory joy over what we're going to gain.
Woo!
That was big, Doc.
You just said something. You just
I'm telling you.
say that again.
That's good.
We what? Say that one more time.
We have a lot of anticipatory grief. I'm sorry, the cat just knocked my computer. He's having a moment. He's
Valerie.
I've been watching.
I don't do cats, so I'm gonna walk with you, but I'm not coming. I'm not the cat. You got to put the cat up when I come.
I'm with
I already told you I would put the cat up when you come. Anyway, what I said was we have a lot of anticipatory grief around what we will lose, but no or rare anticipatory joy over what we will gain.
Yeah.
And may I say, Doctor, that really speaks to where I've been, because retirement is a great loss.
Talk about
what
it,
you've been doing for decades. It's a major loss. And you find yourself spending a lot of time thinking about what you've lost instead of the fact that there's joy that can be gained in this season. And saying no is a grief moment because you're saying no to things that you have been accustomed to doing and have become a part of you. And we really don't want to go through that grieving season. We don't want to do that. That was good. That was good.
Because we've learned to place other people at the center of our universe, right? So when we take them out of the center and place ourselves in the center, now we are dealing with all of the things that we learned as people pleasers. All the things that we learned as, worshiping at the throne of making everybody else happy. So when we draw those boundaries, we're saying yes to ourselves, and which is new, right? We've got all of our satisfaction from pleasing someone else, right? And so we are having to teach ourselves to be satisfied in a different way, in a different space. At the same time, we're teaching others that this is the new place that I'm operating. To make myself happy.
And also that it's the Jesus way, because a lot of times people want to say, oh, that's the world. You know what I'm like? Jesus disappeared on people all the time.
All the time.
He would be like,
I'm out. Deuces.
Like, and he's like, come aside. And I mean, it's a model that we overlook because I hear people say all the time, I want to wear out. I don't want to rust out. I'm like, there's something between wearing out and rusting out. I'm pretty sure there is.
There's a middle.
Let's work the middle. Jamie Edie Chisholm says, and we have to make space for the grief that may come as we make these changes for our own well-being. Yeah. We got to make space for the grief that will come.
It's coming.
Jamie, that will come. And I want to say that some of that grief is not just the grief of it's the grief of our own expectations, because a lot of times we have found our identity in what we do. And when we're not that anymore, whatever that is, we go through a grieving process, and that's very, very, very real. And we have to work that out. Grief is real, but you don't have to stay in grief. Grief is something that I believe it's a real emotion, but I believe it's something we move through. When I was doing grief counseling for a year after my mother passed, I did grief counseling. I actually started grief counseling before my mother passed, because I found out that I was actually grieving her before she died, because I was grieving the things that she could no longer do with us anymore. You know what I'm saying? So that grief process started before she actually closed her eyes and took her last breath. And so, but my grief therapist said to me, grief is natural and we all experience grief, and we should. But she said there's a difference between grief and complicated grief. And complicated grief is when we're not able to move through it and move and get to the other side where there is joy. And so that's a whole nother conversation by itself. Grief, we can talk about it all night.
Dr. Tony, we have to realize too, whatever stage we're in, whether we're grieving or what we're doing, our thoughts and our emotions are not commandments.
Are not what?
Commandments. Our thoughts and our emotions are not commandments. A lot of times we act on our thoughts, we act on our emotions, our feelings, but they are not commandments. And a lot of times we make them commandments in our lives, and they're not.
Okay.
So we have to leave them where they are. If I'm feeling sad or I'm angry, it is not a commandment for me to go and do something because I'm in that space. Or I'm thinking, so our thoughts and our emotions are not commandments. If I am feeling like I want to say no, but they're going to be mad at me. Well, my feelings is not a commandment, for me to go and do. My thoughts are not. And a lot of times we do make our thoughts and our emotions commandments, like to do something. And
so we're ruled by those.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Pastor Tony, to piggyback on something that Dr. Bridgeman was saying, one of your podcasts, I don't know who the name of your guest, but she talked about intentional selfishness.
Yeah, that was Nikita Thick pen.
We've got to give ourselves permission to be intentionally selfish for our own self-care, and going back to saying no, and letting no being a declarative sentence, and people pulling on us and draining us, particularly those of us who are in ministry and we have all the weight of people's expectations, and people expecting us to be there, and people to always ask us to show up. And there's got to be a time in our lives that we can give ourselves permission to be intentionally selfish for our own good, to look out for ourselves and our own well-being. And it is a mindset shift.
You will be surprised. Yes. I just launched an intentional self-care program, Melodie, and thank you for joining. Where I'm working with a group of women this year in this program. I have 3. If anybody that's listening and would like to join, I have 3 spots left because I'm intentionally keeping the group small because of my own personal bandwidth. All right. And so, but anyway, you would be surprised the number of women who, when I talk to them about being intentional about their self-care, just do not even know where to start. And so, Aaron Bob put up the question, what are your suggestions for starting a self-care routine? Anybody can answer that. Of course I could, but I want to hear from our guests as well. So what would you suggest? How do we start with being intentional?
I think we start with where Dr. Ingram mentioned earlier. What is it that you really want, right? I think giving yourself permission to assess your own wants and needs and desires is the starting point. So you just don't start doing stuff, right? But you are, like I said, recentering yourself in your universe and beginning to talk to yourself and to talk to God about, in this season, what is it that I really want?
Okay.
And from that conversation,
so allowing start there. Okay, good.
Yeah, and I would start at an even more primal place, which is deep breathing.
Talk about that.
Drinking water, sleep. Like I would start, because I don't even think you can get to what do I really want if you are dehydrated.
Ooh. If you can't even think clear.
If you can't, because you can't think clear when you're dehydrated or when you're sleepy.
I love.
Yeah.
Talk about deep breathing, Jada, because you teach on deep breathing. As a matter of fact, Jada does a class for us in the Self-Care Network on deep breathing. Talk about that, Jada. We can't hear you. Can you unmute? Are you muted? Let's see. We can't get Jada. Jada? I don't know what happened with your sound. We'll come back to you. Work on your sound. We'll come, because I want you to address that deep breathing piece.
Dr. Tony, can we hear her? I wanted to add to something that Dr. Tracy said about awareness. Starting a routine or a self-care routine would first start also with your mindset. You have to change your mindset and begin to focus on, this is what I want to do. That's another way of answering the question, what do I really want? So it starts with your mindset. What are you thinking? How do you think about self-care? How do you think about what is the next thing or the first thing that I ought to do? So I believe that it starts with the mindset. And I think it was Dr. Tracy who said also it starts with working from the inside out. We always look aesthetically for self-care, but it starts with working from the inside out, starting with your mindset.
Okay.
And then too, you have to look at it and say this.
I do.
Jada, are you good? It sounds like you're coming in, but it's you're getting stuck.
Yeah.
Why don't we do
this? It's essential. I think that the way that I'm unmuted. I'm not. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You know what, Jada? You know what we may need you to do?
Hear me?
Yeah, why don't you go out and come back in? And it may
I'm here.
reconnect. Can you hear? Can we hear you?
Let's see.
It's going in and out on my end.
Yeah, it's going in and out.
Delayed.
It's delayed, yeah.
I'm gonna remove her and bring her back in.
So from that piece, being mindful, being present is key in being self-aware, right? So if you look at it, and I say this when I'm teaching, the past is everything that we've gone through, but it does not exist. The past does not exist. The future does not exist, right? And so if I'm sitting here like, what if this, what if that, how about this, how about that? That's future. That's anxiety.
Wow.
Past is depression because I'm bringing it up to the forefront. And so therefore, if I'm like this, the only way that I can be mindful is in the present, right? So if I am present, then I'm not in the past. And our brains are dysfunctional. We've learned a lot.
That's good.
In terms of your brain is only supposed to be used for information only. That's truth. Like if I am setting a goal, I'm using it for information. But if I'm sitting here, if my tire goes out, I then use the information that I know to get my tire fixed. But I don't sit and think about my tire all the time, right?
It's a database.
And so that's past, that's future. In the past, I might have been in a bad relationship. And then I get into a new relationship, but I'm bringing that information to my present that does not exist. Past and future does not exist, only the present. And the Bible talks about being present because in the present, there's fullness of joy. And the reason why people cannot stay in this place of being aware or being mindful is because they're always operating in the past or in the future.
Worried about the future.
Yes. And so if I'm present, so when I wake up, I wake up to my alarm is a heartbeat, right? And the reason why, because it reminds me immediately my heart is beating. I'm in the present. I'm not thinking about what I got to do, what's going on. So being present is like if you're driving and you're like, oh, I got this to do and I got this to do and I got to do this. What about this? I'm not present. What's the difference between me and a drunk driver?
Wow.
If I'm in my head, there's no difference. So when you're in here and we're talking about breathing and we're talking about listening to your heart, if I drive and I see things that are going around and I see the trees, I'm present. And that's the first place to start with self-care. Stand out of the future that does not exist and stand out of the past that is not going to help you move forward in your present state.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
That's good. Good.
Jada, can we hear you?
Oh, I really want to hear.
I really want to hear you talk about deep breathing. We're having some issues with your audio.
You can't hear.
Yeah. Yes. Can I be heard?
Yeah. Okay.
My audio out now. Is it just choppy?
No, it's good.
You're good.
Oh, yes. Okay.
We can hear
what
you
about
great.
now?
Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me, but not. Okay, I just turned off my camera. Okay. So yes, the way that I the way that I began talking about breathing is just to, like we're talking about nutrition being important, the decisions that we make about food. We can go weeks, a month and a half or so without food. We can go a couple of days without hydration. We can only go a few moments without breath. And that And so we have to know that know and appreciate, number one, that we never have to think about our breath. It is one of the systems that's both autonomic. We don't have to think about it. It happens on its own, but also we can have some level of control over it. And the way that we breathe, the depth to which we breathe, impacts every other system within our bodies. So it impacts our muscles, it impacts our nervous system, it impacts our heart rate, it impacts our digestion, it impacts every system within the body. And our intestines digest faster and deeper breaths so that our digestive system knows that we are safe, we are calm, and now is the time that it can speed up and digest more efficiently without causing issues, right? We can't just tell our heart, slow down, but we can take deeper breaths, and that in turn will help to regulate our heart rate. So the breathing that we do is so essential when we're out in traffic, when partner, when we're, at work, or when we're trying to figure out how to treat our children or other people. But I want to say that adding on to Reverend Dr. Ingram and Reverend Leah about how to think about what we want to do, how to prioritize it. One of those very fundamental ways is to journal, is to list make. So when we start I have so many lists in my phone, on my tablet, everywhere I'm making these lists. And when things continue to pop up, I know, okay, this is where my priority, because I have this on 4 different lists about 4 different topics that I've made over the last 2 years. So I really need to get on this goal, or I really need to get this off of the list. So yes, that self-awareness, that making sure that we are prioritizing, write it down. And sometimes it can be a confirmation or an affirmation. Sometimes you might think you have a new thought or a new goal, and then you go back to a previous list and say, oh my gosh, I thought about that 5 years ago. I really need to do it now.
Yeah.
And
Dr. Ingram, you talk about journaling a lot, and as a spiritual discipline.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I have been journaling since June of 1982. I literally have hundreds of journals. And what Jada just mentioned in terms of it helping you to prioritize or to identify your purpose or passion, I know from my journaling what really matters to me. Because if I go back and I look and I see, oh my God, I'm still writing about this. It's been 2 years, but journaling helps you to keep in touch with who you really are. Now, I don't know that this comment has anything to do with what we're talking about right now, but I want to say it some time ago when you're talking about significance. In my time of being in therapy and having a spiritual director and adjusting to the losses and retirement and doing less, my spiritual director said to me, what you're doing may be smaller, but it's no less significant. And that freed me up so much, because in a way of transparency, I was supervisor over all these women and and now I'm doing a prayer call on Friday mornings. I don't see the people, etc. And when I was sharing that with him, and there are things that I could say yes to, but because I now really clearly understand my purpose, getting to that purpose and doing it has required smaller projects, so to speak. But just keep in mind, doing less does not mean you're any less significant.
Thank you. Free us, please. Free us. That's my word for this year, Dr. Ingram, significance. That was my word. I try to, everybody said, well, what's your word for the year? And I don't do it every year because I'm not going to be beholden to trying to, these things that we do that everybody, you got to have a word for the year. No, but I do like to focus, and I'd like to ask the Lord in my prayer time, where should I be focused? And that was my word coming into this year. I kept hearing that word, significance, which meant for me doing less. It was focusing, and it was, really, really being laser accurate about where I should be, what I should be doing, and who I should be doing it with.
That's self-care.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like Dr. Bridgeman said, sometimes that's just taking a nap, that's walking, that's drinking more water. That's it's not always the big, I got to go on a 10-day cruise. No, but it's spending time with myself, or fixing something around my house that that I've been walking past has been irritating me. No, take care of that, because our environment, our living environment, it matters to our self-care. How long you gonna keep seeing that light bulb out, or saying you need to fix this, get your carpet cleaned, and all of that stuff is self-care. Our environment,
I'm hearing you say, Doctor. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say this one other thing, and I'm gonna give it to you, Leah. I remember a few years ago, I got my I had a company come in and do and clean the vents in my house. And they have this special vacuum that they use, that they clean all the vents in your house with. And I cannot tell you how God spoke to me in that whole process. The way my house felt different, the air felt different, everything. And the spiritual thing that I got from that was how much stuff we carry around in our physical environment, in our mind, in our psyche, in our emotions, in our bodies. And we carry it for years, and we don't even know all the stuff. Breathing in and taking in, that's literally killing us.
Yes. Wow.
So I tell people, clean your house. That's the part of self-care.
Clean out your closet and your drawers.
I cleaned out my closet this year. I took 3 days just to clean my closet and get rid of stuff, clothes I knew I couldn't wear anymore, stuff I'm tripping over, and the freeing of my mind that took place when I did that. So it's not always going on a vacation. Yes, Leah.
Doing the things that we need to do so that we can do the things that we want to do. It's a very big part of self-care, because sometimes we neglect things that we need to address, right? So in our journaling about what we want and where we want to be and what we find to be fun and what we enjoy, but to the point from earlier, we're not drinking our water. We're developing diabetes. We're developing high blood pressure, right? I don't like working out. I work out 6 days a week because I need to work out 6 days a week, right? And if I want to
have it clean.
Jada,
say that again. What?
Say that, Jada. Turn your camera off, because we can hear you better when your camera goes off. Say it one more time. We'll come back to you, Jada. I want to look at this comment. Jamie Edie Chisholm says, "Oh, I love that, Dr. Ingram. I've learned to redefine some of these words without the white capitalist lens. Words like significant. What we do, listen, this is so good. What we do, whether for 1 or 1 million, is significant. A nap, I'm a big component of nap. A nap can be as productive as a conference call. Oh, that needs to be on a t-shirt.
It needs to be on a t-shirt.
That needs to be on a t-shirt. Let me tell y'all something. I believe in naps. As a matter of fact, it's biblical. God called Elijah to go to sleep.
Nap will save somebody's life.
Jesus was asleep at the bottom of the boat. Come on now. I believe in naps. It's self-care. I believe in sleep. It's important. Yes, Leah.
I was
just saying, nap will save someone's life, mine and yours.
I wasn't talking.
I tell people, some of y'all,
but it's very
for prayer. You don't need prayer. You just need a nap.
And it's also too very important, though. We sit here and laugh about the importance of a nap, but all a nap is telling our bodies you need to rest. Yeah. And it's not in that segmented 8 to 10 hours that we go to bed at night. Sometime during the day, we have poured out so much that our bodies are weary and it needs to be restored. And so it's good when we listen to our bodies say, go lay me down and rest and take a nap. And I'm going to say this one more thing and then I'm going to stop. So last week, my body was saying, go lay down and take a nap. And I woke up almost 5.5 hours. I had been asleep for 5.5 hours.
Now, my sister-in-law, Anastasia Alvarado, would say, any nap over 2 hours is not a nap. You don't went to bed.
I should have put my pajamas on.
So, but what it delivers us from, though, is a God-like complex, because the only one who neither slumbers nor sleep is God.
That's good. See, this is what I'm talking about. Y'all too deep.
It's good.
No, really. Sleep reminds us that we are human, and our I can't go to bed is a part of our God-like complex of feeling like if we don't do it, it won't get done.
My. Come on.
That's good.
Lisa Robinson says all the yes is in here. Can we talk about normalizing rest as productive activity?
Yes.
But because even before we wear our bodies down, we have to build our bodies up to be able to act, right? And so I think that's the other thing we have to think about naps. Like, you can nap before you're exhausted. You can sit down somewhere before you fall out, right? And thinking and being still allows space for a whole lot of things to happen to be able to be productive.
Right.
And also, I just want to add to this. Resting does not always require a nap either, because you can rest and not nap. And so a lot of people don't know how to rest their minds while being awake and not going to sleep. And so if you can learn how to just sit quietly, I'm not talking about going to this trance or anything like that, but I'm just saying sit quietly, breathe, right? And drink water, turn off water. External
meditation.
Yes. That is resting.
It's rest.
Well, may I just say this? I'm not a napper necessarily, but I go to sleep at 9 o'clock. And so if you see me yawning, I'm about ready.
Dr. Ingram, let me tell you something.
Dr. Ingram, I'm with you. I'm like, y'all rolling up my pumpkin time. I turn into a pumpkin at 9.
Mine too. My bedtime is 9:30. Bishop's like, I just can't go to bed that early. I can't. And listen, I had to take a nap in order to be up here on this Zoom. Trust me, I went to sleep this afternoon. Y'all, this has been so good. We could be here all night, and we're not going to do that. But I just want to thank you all again for coming in here with me. I want to let these our audience know where they can find us and where they can connect with us on some on other levels. Let me see. I just want to put a few more comments on the screen. Stacey Adams says self-care can start by taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes daily, enjoying your coffee, tea, your breakfast. Quit rushing. That's another way to take care of yourself. How does identifying what you want relates to identifying what you deserve? Because sometimes you feel like you're not deserving. What suggestions do you recommend? Yes, I do a whole teaching on getting over self-care guilt, And so we can talk about that at another time. But yes, you do deserve it. You deserve to take care of yourself. All right, honey, just look yourself in the face and tell yourself, I deserve this. All right. All right, breathe. Somebody said breathe. Somebody said yes, journaling. Let's see here. Let me see here. Somebody said deconstructing the ego, taking a nap, Right. Yes. So these naps are really getting to people. All right. Everybody want to take a nap now. Somebody says it's time to go to bed. Somebody said that to you.
Look at Valerie. Look at Dr. Valerie.
I saw it, Dr. Ingram. I saw it too.
Listen, I told y'all rolling up on I turned into a pumpkin.
Melodie. Somebody said, sis, you went to bed.
And it was good.
That's like me yesterday after church. I couldn't even eat. I was like, I'm going to sleep. All right. I have no issues with napping and sleeping. I'm the power of nap queen. I'm the power of nap queen. All right. You all, this has been such a good dialogue. Like I said, we could talk all day. We could be here all night because this subject is so vast. And there's so many aspects to self-care that we could all engage in. So many principles to self-care, health, and wellness. And I appreciate you all. Every one of our presenters, I think, except Desiree. Desiree, I got to get you on the podcast. But every one of the women who are on here tonight have been on our podcast. And I want to say shout out to Tracy Barbee. Your episode on how food impacts our mood was our number one listened to and watched video in 2020. And then in 2021, Reverend Dr. Jessica Ingram's episode on spiritual formation and self-care was our number one. And Leah, last year, her podcast episode on managing your pace of life was our number one. And Leah, I want to say to you, I want you to say something real quick about that as a single woman, because sometimes as singles, people expect y'all to do everything because you ain't married, you don't have children or whatever. So say something about that as a single woman.
So for me,
managing your pace.
I look at what season I'm in, and that determines what makes my calendar. So purpose and season, timing, right? And if it's not in line with those things, God bless you. I love you. This is the season, yes, that God has me in the season of singleness, but it's not in line with what God has for me to do right now. And staying focused on being authentic in the season and the finite amount of time I have for the season.
Yeah.
And so it allows me to stay in season, but on pace and not to overextend myself. So always going back to purpose and season.
Sure. And you just will be surprised the number of people that you are, all of us, when we're going through these things and we're modeling these things in our lives, you will never know how we are helping our sisters, but by just being. Not always, the conversations like tonight, but just by being and doing and being present and modeling self-care, health, and wellness principles. Let me let our audience know where they can find us. First of all, those of you who are just joining us, you are listening to the Harmonize Your Life Podcast Talkback with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. And you can find this podcast you can find us on Anchor, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can also go to my YouTube channel at Dr. Tony Alvarado. We're live right now on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook pages. You can follow this podcast there. All of these women have been guests on our podcast, and I want you to know where you can find them. You can find us on on Facebook. I have them scrolling across here. You Dr. Jessica Ingram there. You see the Ingram Difference. She has her own Facebook page there. Desiree Young, Jada Wright, Dr. Valerie Bridgeman, Tracy Barbee, all of us. You can find us on Facebook. Leah Jackson, Melodie Powell Boone. You can find us there. You can go to Instagram and find us there. We're all present on Instagram. The Fountain of Hope Counseling Center is there. The Ingram Difference has a page on Facebook. I was looking for you on Instagram. Are you on Instagram, Dr. Ingram, with the Ingram Difference?
Yeah, I'm on there, but it's under my name.
Okay. So you can find all of us. I have those things scrolling across the screen. Just look us up. You can find any of us on social media, and you can follow us in the work that we are doing in the various spaces that God has allowed us to minister and share and teach, and just follow our lives and the way that we do things as it relates to self-care, health, and wellness. We're also present on Twitter. So you can find all of us on Facebook. You can find all of us on Instagram, and you can find us on Twitter. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I want to also let those of you that are interested know that you can join. I have a few more spaces left in my intentional self-care program. And if you want to know more about that, email me at hello@drtonyalvarado.com, and I can let you know how you can become a part of that intentional self-care program for this year, as we were working with a small group of women who are serious about in being intentional this year about their self-care. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It's getting ready to be all of our bedtime, so we're getting ready to sign off in just a minute. And so I am just so grateful to each and every one of our guests who were with us on tonight. Thank you for
having me.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tony.
Yes, we love you,
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm excited. Y'all stay with us in the Harmonize Your Life podcast. We have new episodes coming down starting Monday, February 6th. You will see new episodes for 2023 on our podcast. You'll probably hear some of these women later on this year on the podcast, and others who have been a part of this podcast community. Follow us, like us, share these conversations with other women and men in your life and in our community, so we can be whole, spirit, soul, and body. Again, thank you for being a part of this podcast, and we'll see you again on another episode of Harmonize Your Life, Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color podcast with your host, Dr. Tony G. Alvarado. Talk to you all soon.
Bye.